Please welcome USA Today best-selling author of The Lighthouse Effect, How Ordinary People Can Have an Extraordinary Impact in the World, Steve Pemberton. Steve, thank you. Welcome to the Can Fam. I want to launch right into the title of the book, The Lighthouse Effect. Explain what that is.
The Lighthouse Effect is just this ordinary idea that any of us, immersed in the hustle and bustle of our own lives, can stop and pause for a moment and be a lighthouse to someone else. But it's also an opportunity for us to be that lighthouse, of course, but to find one for ourselves. So it's fascinating duality that the lighthouse itself as a structure represents.
So does the Lighthouse Effect include, we saw Jacinta share her tragedy, we saw Shine share his pain of going to prison and then ending up a politician. Does the Lighthouse Effect include us needing to tell our story to other people?
We have to tell our story. When you share your story, any of us, it's really an invitation for somebody to share their story with you. And when they do, you find these common connections of humanity, of family, of faith, fortitude, forgiveness. Jacinta's story, as an example, that was my mother's story. My mother was incarcerated, battling addiction. I had been taken from her when I was 3, and I never saw her again. So when I see Jacinta's story and just this desire to right the wrongs of an inheritance, and I think, had my mother seen a story like that, then I would still have had her in my life. I'd have a memory of her. And so it requires us to be a bit vulnerable because you never know how much the pain of our past is a present reality for somebody else, and they see in us the way through it.
Right. You know, I have so much to digest from that alone, but you talk about in the book 13 years of abuse and neglect that you survived, and you dedicated this book to one specific person.
John Sykes. I had been in the system and really lost in the gaps of the system, and I knew it. I had no memory of my mother or father. I don't know where I've come from, who I belong to. And unfortunately, the homes where I found myself were not good places. But I'm battling. And I find myself seated across from my social worker 3 days after Christmas. I'd been in his office all day. And I'm watching him calling families, trying to get somebody to take me in. It's now dusk, and I can see he's out of options. And he turns to me and he says, "Do you know anybody?" And I almost said to him, well, like, isn't that your job? But I knew he's trying to, as many social workers are, he's trying to do the best that he could.
Right.
And I shared with him a comment that a high school teacher made about me. And we wound up calling that teacher. He was a bachelor living on his own, and he gets this call 3 days after Christmas when I absolutely needed a miracle and said, "Can the 16-year-old boy stay with you?" He said yes. Now, it was supposed to be for just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, they never found me permanent placement, so I stayed my last year of high school with him. Yeah. We lost John earlier this year. But there's not a day that passes that I don't think about what he did in that moment.
Wow.
Just putting his life on pause to see this young boy who society did not have a place for. You know, in essence, he said, "I'm your lighthouse."
But you also say, and I feel like I'm just reading the whole book to the audience, you're welcome. But you talk about protect your spirit, and this really spoke to me. And actually, I started crying last night when I read it. It says, having uncompromising beliefs also means safeguarding your own spirit, defining who and what you want in your life.
Yeah.
And protecting our spirit is something we don't do enough, I feel, in the right way.
Right.
What have you learned to share from these stories about that?
It's as much who's around you, you know, who lifts you, who celebrates you. If you find yourself in relationships where you're constantly defending yourself all the time or having to explain your vision or your idea of a better life, then you're going to need to find different kind of relationships.
Yeah.
Because ultimately what that does is it chips away at you. And so and you feel the heaviness, right? You feel the weight of that on you. But But you control all of that. That's the beauty of it. You decide who and what is going to be in your world. Yeah. I decided a long time ago, that I wasn't going to have drama, that I was always going to be surrounded by people who not only are positive themselves, but look to uplift others.
Yeah.
So I look at my circle of friends, and they're all kind of similarly bent.